manager and the founder of Noble Missions, an organization, tools, and opportunity to become active citizens. He enjoys designing and implementing projects that directly impacts marginalized groups. He is a transparency and accountability practitioner in Nigeria and a RISE Global Coaching Fellow. We welcome you, sir, and over to you.
All right, thank you for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm speaking from Nigeria, so it's still afternoon for us. Okay, so quickly, I'm going to share my screen and just run through my presentation. I think we have spent quite an amount of time today already. Okay, so as I said, my name is Charles Omofoma, and I'm just going to look at some digital technologies, digital and future technologies and innovation and opportunities for the African youth. But majorly, I'm going to be showing you how especially African youths are already creating or leveraging on technology to make impact in the continent, and opportunities for other young people outside Africa to be able to work with African youths to make to leverage technology even more. So I represent Noble Missions. You already heard about us. So quickly, let's look at youth in Africa. I have a few statistics here and why Africa is an interesting and very strategic continent when it comes to the future of the world, so to speak. So according to Mo Ibrahim Foundation, by 2100, Africa should still have the youngest population worldwide with a median age of 35. So in 2020, African young population, under 35 was almost 1 billion people. And by 2100, African youth will be equivalent to twice of Europe's entire population, and almost 1/2 of the world's youth will be from Africa. So with this, just this few statistics, you could tell why Africa is very important to the world development, and why young people in Africa should be very concerned about their own development. Because having huge population could either be a blessing or a curse, all right? But for Africa, we hope that having huge young population will be a blessing, and we'll be able to utilize our resources, both human resources and non-human resources. So now, looking at development in general, looking at the SDGs as coined by the UN, what are the innovations and opportunities we already have in Africa that the world should learn from, or the world should look at? And as the previous speaker said, there are already innovations happening in Africa. Nigeria, for example, with a population of about 200 million people, you could tell that a lot is already happening. And that's why you see that Western investors are rushing to Africa to invest in these startups by these young people, because they know that these young people could deliver. All right. So I'm going to look at the SDGs, but of course, we don't have much time. So I will only just talk about the first SDG, which is no poverty. All right. And if you check online, say, meaning of poverty from Wikipedia, you see that poverty is the state of not having enough material possession or income for a person's basic needs. So basically, everything we do is to make sure that people escape poverty, basically. So our innovations is to make life better, to improve standard of living for Africans. So as an African, when I'm thinking of innovation, thinking of ideas, I'm coming from that perspective. What I'm doing, will it help someone escape poverty? Will it improve someone's standard of living? Will it make life easier for someone? Because if life is easier for you, then it becomes even easy for you to escape poverty. And if you look at poverty in Africa, nearly, well, the statistics is not too good, but I'm glad that we are coming out and things are improving. Young people are waking up to take responsibility and to create innovations that will even lift more people out of poverty in spite of the government. All right. So according to development aid, about 490 million people live in extreme poverty in Africa. 14 out of 18 countries where poverty is rising are in Africa. 90% of the world's poorest might be living in Africa by 2030 if nothing is done Now, in 2018, Nigeria overtook India as a country with the largest number of people living in extreme poverty. An estimated 87 million Nigerians were said to be living in extreme poverty. And that's about living on less than $1.90 a day. So these are opportunities. So I brought this out not to say, oh, African is poor. No, it's to show you that there are a lot of opportunities. All right. Because if you have innovations that will lift people out of poverty, that innovation will sell fast. All right. People will appreciate, investors will appreciate those innovations. And we know that one of the best ways, according to the UN, one of the best ways to escape poverty is through quality education. All right, through quality education, whether it's primary, whether it's primary, whether it's secondary, whether it's tertiary, or whether it's just lifelong learning. All right, so even people that are already working, they need access to education. All right, to keep learning, and for you to even be able to innovate, you need to have good education. Okay, and according to UNESCO, it says if all adults completed secondary education, 420 million could be lifted out of poverty. So you see that. So just secondary school education alone, about 420 million people could be lifted out of poverty. All right. And that's why for my presentation today, which is quite short, I'm really looking at education in Africa. How are people innovating to improve access to education or improve access to quality education? All right. And if you look at the evolution of education technology in Africa in the 60s, 1960s, yeah, we're using radio and TV. People could program radio and TV. So either for teacher education or for education for young people. So you could sit down and listen. All right. And I want you to take note of what I'm talking about now, because if you look at even the TVs and radio, there are still opportunities to innovate. I remember during the pandemic, people started using radios and TV to educate children in Nigeria. And I'm sure that happened in other countries or in other African countries. So despite that, that's how education technology started in Africa, but you can still innovate within that space. All right. Then from there in the 90s, computer hardware, people started producing educational materials in CDs. From there, you have your normal computer. So that's how we have come this far, up to the point time now that we now use tablets and mobile tools, which is just everywhere. All right. So if you check within this space, you can see innovate in this space. And I'll be showing you some innovations we have currently in Africa that I think even youth in India or in other countries could key into, or could collaborate with Africans to make more impact. Now, for example, I don't know if you're heard of Enisa Education. Now, these guys, they have over 800,000 users, all right? And they use mobile SMS. So what it means that you may not need to have internet access. So to get education to rural communities, remote communities where there's poor internet access, so you could use your normal phone, your non-internet smartphone to access education using SMS. Okay, so these guys are in Kenya, Ghana, and in Ivory Coast. Then let's go to East Africa specifically. Looking at KioKit. Now, KioKit is a handy box packed with various digital education tools. So what they do is, when you subscribe, every child gets a box called the KioKit. And in that box, you have already programmed education materials in a smartphone or tablet rather. Okay. Now, you don't need internet access to access these boxes because they're already loaded with educational materials. But automatically, these tablets are updated using a general network that the tablet is connected to. All right. So the smart tablets automatically update itself when there are new materials, so they can remotely, using cloud technology, upload materials or update the smart tablet. Then in Tanzania, there's what we call Ubongo. I don't know if you're ahead of Ubongo before. Ubongo provides fun, localized, and multi-platform educational content for kids via accessible technologies like TV, radio, and mobile phone. So remember what I said before, that even though educational technology, evolution of edtech in Africa could be traced back to in the 60s using TVs and radios, but you can see innovate in that space, and that's exactly what Ubongo is doing. They're still innovating using TV and radio and mobile phones, of course, to reach people that ordinarily may not have access to this type of education. Then coming to Nigeria, where I'm from, we have several innovations, but I'll mention a few. Even in my organization, last year we created a platform called Give a Teach, where low community schools could be linked to working professionals to teach them the various skills that are not available in their schools. And low resource community schools don't have access to quality teachers, don't have access to the kind of subjects that you may have in other well-funded schools. So what we did was to connect these schools to professionals in town remotely, using the platform to be able to provide teaching, provide classes for these children in low resource community schools. And that worked well. It was a test program. We did it for a year and we stopped it, hoping that we'll come back based on the lessons we have learned, we'll come back to scale it up. But now in Nigeria, we have what we call tutoria, which I'm sure the technology is not far-fetched, so I'm sure it's in every country. Even in India, we will have this type of technology. It's an online platform that helps students connect with qualified tutors in their area. All right. So even if you don't want to go to normal secondary school, the government approved secondary schools, through their platform, you get your education and enroll for exams that children in other schools will enroll for. Then we have ScholarX. Scholar is a platform focused on educational financing, which helps students to access scholarships. So what Scholar does, or one of the things they do, is that they connect students with scholarships, students from rural communities, brilliant children who are unable to afford their education. So they connect them to scholarships so that they'll be able to gain access to education that the privileged gain access to. Then I think I'm going to stop in terms of innovations in Africa. I will stop at Andela, because every time I look at Andela's story, I'm inspired. Andela was co-founded by a Nigerian called Inoluwa Abuyeji some years ago. Now, basically what Andela does is they look for talent in Africa, retrain them, and connect them to companies in developed countries. All right. Currently, they have campuses in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Kenya, and some other African countries. And their growth, I would like to go back and check them out, Andela. So it's an tech company. They have grown so big, and in fact, they were one of the people that attracted Mark Zuckerberg, founder of Facebook, to Nigeria then. All right. So I try to show you some innovations that have happened in Nigeria or in Africa generally, that young people have come up with to try and lift people out of poverty. Looking at Andela, for example, there are several young people in Africa who are working for companies in the US, companies in the UK, right from their home country in Africa, through Andela. All right. So this is possible, but there's so much opportunities that we are not yet tapped into, so much opportunities. And there are some technologies that I believe, this is my personal opinion anyway, that we're not yet tapped into in Africa. And looking at Andela's story, how this young Nigerian was able to collaborate with other founders in other developed countries. Young people in India can collaborate with young people in Nigeria to tap into these technologies that have not yet been tapped into well in Africa, right? So for example, I looked at augmented reality. How much of it have been tapped into in Africa, even in terms of education? Not much. So if you look at the innovations I talked about, they were not really into augmented reality. Maybe few people use machine learning, artificial intelligence, but there's so much potential for augmented reality, AR as we may call it. What about 3D printing? It's true that in Africa, we may not have access to so many things like in developed countries, but if there are innovations around 3D technology, those things can be printed. So for example, you want to train a medical doctor or a medical student who want to learn about maybe heart surgery, for example. Heart could be printed using 3D technology. All right, instead of sourcing for heart, re-heart, or maybe of corpses and all that, you could, through 3D technology, hearts could be printed, human parts could be printed for proper education. So these are opportunities for young Africans. These are opportunities for young Indians to collaborate with young Africans to scale innovations in Africa. What about robotics? There's so much that has not been done that can be done. And there's so much other technology that we could tap into, whether it's cloud technology, whether it's even mobile technology. And because mobile penetration in Africa, for example, is increasing. In Africa, in fact, as at January this year, access to mobile technology in Nigeria was over 100 million people. So you could imagine if we tap into that into mobile technology, how much impact we could make. Because someone who's never educated will have access to mobile phones, or have access to even more than one mobile phone. So I just said, let me run through this. There's not much time. I thought I would come on earlier, but I wasn't called on. So I really have other engagements. I said, let me just run through this, and hopefully we'll have opportunities to engage more, to talk about innovations in Africa, beyond even SDG 1, beyond poverty, no poverty, beyond quality education. There's so many other areas in agriculture. We know that Africa has vast mass of land for agriculture. And most of our farming is still very manual. So that means there's so much opportunity in the area, so much things we could do, innovate to make farming easier. Even encourage everyone to go into farming. Home gardening from your home. How can you farm? What technology can you use to farm even from your home without owning large space of land and all that? So I won't be able to go through my slide. I will stop here. And if you have any questions, comments, please feel free to go ahead. And before I go, I'd like to say thank you to the organizers for bringing me on board. I hope we'll have more opportunity to talk more about this. Have more time to dwell more on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. That's